Hi, welcome to the Life Channel. I'm going to be showing you how to make some bread today. We're going to be baking bread. It's a nice rainy day outside, so I don't know how the yeast is going to work real well, but we'll find out. It's going to be nice and humid, and we'll make it work. Anyhow, this is a recipe for white sandwich bread that I have. It's my own recipe I've developed over a period of time, and I've been working on it, and I can't say it, well, it's pretty nearly perfected. So anyways, you're going to love it. It's light and fluffy. It's about the size of a bread loaf that you'd buy in the store. Much better taste. We been eating this for a while, and not too long ago I took a little hiatus from making it and had to go back to eating store-bought bread, and there is just no comparison. So anyway, come on along, and I'll try to be very detailed about how to do it and what measurements to use and things like that. But you're going to love the results. So watch it all the way through. Hey, give me a like, click like, subscribe, pass it on, share it to your friends, okay? Be right back with you. Okay, first thing, we got a mixing bowl. I sprayed just a little bit of spray oil in there just to keep the dough from sticking after it raises up. That's not necessary. I don't know if it even makes any difference or not, but makes me feel better anyway. I'm using a 1 cup measure here, and this is bread flour. I've done this with bread flour or all-purpose flour, and I like the bread flour a little bit better. It seems to come out a little fluffier and nicer. Now, people will tell you don't scoop your flour. You should spoon it in. I've tried it both ways, and I can't really see the difference. So whichever way you like to go would be just fine. One thing I do want to tell you, though, is it needs to be an actual cup, which means you're going to have to take a straight edge like the back of a knife and level it off. If you get too much or too little, it will affect how your bread is. We're going to put 3 cups in here. 3 cups of good all-purpose or bread flour. I'm using, like I said, I'm using bread flour. There's 2. And yes, I do make a little bit of a mess once in a while, so I'm not as careful as I should be. But I do that mostly to keep my wife happy, because she thinks I'm going to make a mess every time I come to the kitchen. So this way she's right. There's number 3. We'll set that aside. We're done with it. Now the next thing we got is we're going to put the dry ingredients in first. Now one thing you're going to notice here, I'm going to make a little mound in the middle of the flour. And I use instant yeast. I've heard some people love instant yeast. Some people don't like it. They'd rather use the other. I just like instant yeast better. Now one thing I want you to notice here, I'm putting the yeast all over on one side of that hump of flour that we made. There's a reason for that, and that is, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but they tell me that if salt contacts yeast directly, the salt will kill the yeast. And over here, we're going to put a teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half of salt on the other side of the hill. Okay? Now, we're going to take that, we're going to grab a whisk and just mix that salt into the flour on its side, and we'll mix the wheat or the yeast into the flour on this side. And now it's diluted enough we can stir it all together, and it's not going to affect each other. So we'll just get that all worked in there. Now, the next thing we're going to use is a quart, that'd be good, tablespoon of oil. You can tell I used to be a mechanic. Oil's always in quarts. Use a tablespoon of oil. You can use any kind of oil you like, pretty much. I like olive oil just because it's healthier and it tastes lighter, and so I'm putting that in there. And then we use a tablespoon of either sugar or honey. And I started using honey for sweetener for almost everything a long time ago. So I'm going to put some honey in there. The main thing with the sugar, of course, it does help the taste of the bread, and you can put more in if you want it sweeter or whatever, but I think you probably need a little bit of sugar or honey for the yeast to feed on. I think that helps with the rise. So we're going to put some honey in there. I don't put any more than a tablespoon because my wife can't have sugar, so can't have much sugar. This actually works out to about 15 grams of sugar to a loaf of bread. So you can figure maybe 1 gram of sugar per slice. So that's not an exorbitant amount at all. We're going to whisk that all together, get it all worked up together in there. I made a little hill again there, you can see. Okay, I made a little mound here for the water, a little well for the water. Now I've got 1 cup of very warm water. Now our tap water gets really hot. It gets up to like 120, 130 degrees. That's great for it. If you don't want boiling will kill the yeast. You want it at least 105 degrees just to activate the yeast. So we're gonna just pour that in there and start mixing it up. You can use a spoon or a spoon handle or just your fingers in here if you want to, just to get this all incorporated. You're not trying to really accomplish much at this point, just getting it all mixed together. There, now at this point, I'm going to get in there with my hand because I just like to do that, make sure it's all, no dry stuff outside. I know some people don't do that. It's going to come together eventually, I guess, but I like to have it all mixed in so I can tell it's there. Looks like I maybe need just a tiny bit more water this time. Just a half a tablespoon. Needs to be just a little bit sticky at this stage. I'll set that bowl aside. And what we're going to do now is just let that sit there and rest for about 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes is up. It's been resting long enough. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start kneading it. We're going to knead it for about another 5 minutes. And we're not going to add any more flour. That's very important. In fact, sometimes I may even have to add a little bit of water, but I like my dough to be just a little bit sticky. And this seems like it's doing pretty good at that. I got the scraper here. You can use a spatula or whatever. Sometimes it gets to the point where you have to actually scrape it loose from the countertop or the breadboard in order to get it to go on and keep kneading. But that's okay. When it's a little bit wetter, it makes it rise nicely. Lets the yeast work its way through better. As you begin to knead it, you can feel it. First of all, it just starts to get smooth, and then you can feel it starting, the elasticity starting to build up in it. And that's what we're looking for. That tells us the gluten is working. And it's going to make us some nice, fluffy, well-risen, bubbly bread. Bubbly is probably the wrong word. You can feel it begins to bounce back. That's when you know you're getting someplace with it. And kneading's not a complicated thing. You just fold it back on itself and push it down again. you could probably get just as much accomplished, although it might take a little longer, just sitting there and squeezing it like a ball in different directions like that right there. But this way really builds up the elasticity. I like to turn it every couple of times. Doesn't really matter how you work it, just keep working it. I went ahead and started my oven, even though it's going to be a long time before we're ready to bake, because I want a nice warm place to proof this where it can let that yeast work and really raise up good. My timer likes to alert me a little bit before the time is actually up, but that's okay. This is not a science. It's not written in stone. The time can be adjusted a little either way. This one's coming up really nice and elastic today, so I probably wouldn't have to go quite as long. Now I'm just going to kind of form it up into a ball. Nice and smooth. There's no edges to dry out or get hard, and we're going to just put it right back in the bowl. I've got a cloth dampened with warm water. I'll put that over it and set it in a nice warm place to raise for, usually takes 60 to 90 minutes depending on the atmosphere in the house. You can tell when it's about double its size or better, then it's ready to go to the next step. So we're just going to leave it there, and I'll be back with you in about an hour, hour and a half. Okay, well, it's been about 60 minutes now. We're going to unveil the dough here. It's been a good raising day. They got a nice raise on that. So we're going to just roll that out here very carefully. Try not to get it all stuck to itself where it'll pull apart and everything. Get out as much of it as we can out of the bowl just to minimize the mess. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is just push that down. Yeah, I'm panicking right now, some of you, because it's like, whoa, it was just raised. What we're going to do is we're going to stretch this like that. Bring it right back up here to the center and push it down. We're just going to go around all the way around it and do the same thing over and over again. Just keep stretching it. Again, this just improves the elasticity. Makes it rise more evenly so we don't have air holes, all the nice little bubble effect that you see inside of bread. We don't get any big air holes. We get all little marbly looking holes. Now we've gone around once. We're going to keep going till we go clear around twice. And just keep pulling it back up. You can kind of feel as you're pulling. Once in a while, if you pull too hard or too fast, it'll feel like it's starting to tear. Just stop right there and go back up into the center again. You don't want to tear it. Just want to stretch it. It's kind of like when you see on TV, the guys stretching the pizza dough. That's kind of what we're doing. There we go. Been around twice. It's really got a nice elasticity to it now. What we're going to do, we're going to push this together, roll it over. Now I like to make this a little bit cylindrical shaped so that it's already kind of shaped for the pan. While that was raising, I got a 5x9 baking dish, and I greased the whole thing with butter. You can use oil, you can use lard, you can use whatever you want to. I'm using a corningware pan because that's what I have. I believe it would work better. You'd have better success, especially if you like a little brown crust on the bottom, if you used a metal pan. But this is what I have, so that's what I'm using. I've tried using it in the smaller pans and the ones that you see more commonly in the stores. It just doesn't work. It needs this 9x5 pan. Now we're going to put that in there, and we're just going to cover it back up with our cloth again. Set it in a nice warm spot again, which I'm going to put it right on top of my range because I got the oven going, and that's nice and warm. And I'm going to put it there and leave it for 60 to 90 minutes again until this is, you can kind of see when it starts pulling up on the towel. You might want to have to even take the towel off a little bit, but when it gets up to where it's just above the dish or as much as you think you want it to be, then it's time to pop it in the oven. So for right now, we're going to set it over here in the warm spot, and I'm going to go back and do something different for a while. Be right back. Okay, our bread's been raising for 45 minutes now. Now this is, don't go by the time on this because I've had times like that first one that when I raised it the first time before I punched it back down and stretched it, that usually runs anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes, usually closer to 90. So whenever it doubles in size or a little more. And this time it was done in 60. We're just having a really good raising day, and I just bought some new yeast, so it's probably better yeast maybe than what I had before. But now, after I put it in the pan here, the bread pan, it usually takes 60 to 90 minutes again to get it done. This has only been raising for 45 minutes. And you want to go by, you see here, if it looks like if it raises up anymore, it's going to kind of fall out. You can, over on the other side here, turn you upside down. It actually is starting to cave over a little bit on that side. It's filled the pan up nice. It's over the top. That's what we're looking for. If we go any farther, it'll just be counterproductive. So now before we did all that, I forgot to tell you this. I preheated the oven for 350 degrees. And that's actually a bit less than what a lot of recipes call for, but that seems to work perfectly here. So we got 350 degrees. Our bread's raised up. It's ready to go in the oven. So I'm going to pop her in there. I got the rack. Normally you want the bread to sit about halfway up and down in your oven. With this corningware pan, it doesn't get as hot as a metal pan. And so I usually keep it just a little bit lower than I would for a metal pan, but that's where we cook her at. I'll close it up and we'll check it again in about 12 minutes. Hey, we're checking on the bread here 12 minutes later. Open the oven. You can kind of see the color there. It's not quite ready yet. It wants to be a little darker. Ooh, that looks good though. Wow, can you smell that? We're about 17 minutes into it now. I just keep after that 12-minute mark, I keep checking it about every 2 minutes just to see what 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Kind of keep an eye on it, see what it's doing. I'm going to try something a little different today. Some people like a really dark, crunchy, hard crust on their homemade bread, and that's fine. I know a lot of people like that. My father-in-law, that was his favorite part. But I don't like it that way. So what I'm going to do, and a lot of times here lately because I think it's because of the corningware pan, but I've been getting the bottom that's just real light colored and no crust at all really, and it seems like sometimes the bread's a little soft in the lower third of the loaf. And so I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to put a little aluminum foil tint over the top just to kind of halt the browning on the top crust, and let it go for another 5 minutes or so. Just, baking bread is a trial and error situation. It's all about trying something new and getting more experience and learning things. So I'm still experimenting, and that's what we're going to do here right now. I'm going to open this up. Let me turn the camera around, and I'm going to open this up and put that tint on there, and then we'll leave it set for about another 5 minutes. Let her cook a little longer. Here goes. Okay. Got my little aluminum foil tent right there. Just got a crease down the middle. And, oh, doesn't that look good? Smells even better than it looks. Okay, we're going to put this on there. Very carefully. Close that up. And we're going to let it sit another 4 or 5 minutes. Be right back. Okay, my little tent fell off. It's an experiment. So it's a little bit darker than what I usually like. We're going to test it Grandma's way here. We're going to stick a toothpick in. Hear how crunchy that is? And the toothpick's coming back clean. So that's supposed to tell us that it's done. But I have noticed it's never been doughy, but I have noticed a little bit of softness in the bottom. So that's why we tried the extra time here this time. Now what I'm going to do now is, again, if you like that hard crust, don't do this. But I'm going to take some butter. And I'm just going to use a fork. It's kind of hard to do this with one hand, but I'm just going to coat the whole top of this, all the brown part, with butter. And that softens that up just like magic. Got to do it while it's still hot. Get some down around the edges. Whoops. Okay. Get some more butter. I'm sorry about the erratic camera work here. Get every place covered with that. Oops. Okay, now it's just going to sit there, and it's going to cool off, and it's going to soften up that top, and hopefully we're going to have us some wonderful bread when we get done here. I'll see you in a little bit after it's cooled off. All right, here's the result